Guess what's back? Business and Brews, where real business talk meets real people and always fueled by a good brew. This time we're going podcast first, bite-sized, insightful, and built for conversations you'll want to share. I'm your host, Matt Pierce, founder and CEO of Alleviate, and I'll be sitting down with leaders, entrepreneurs, and friends to talk about leadership, growth, and the stories that make business worth talking about. So grab your favorite brew, pull up a chair, and let's talk business the way it's meant to be talked about. Business and Brews, back, bolder, and better than ever. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Business and Brews. This is a special one. I'm sitting here with my favorite person in the world, my wife, Kaitlin Pierce. She wanted to call it Business and Bruises because we're going to talk about the emotional toll it takes to be married to an entrepreneur, but we're not going to rebrand the podcast just for that. So, Kaitlin, thanks for being here with me. One, as we plan to launch this episode the week of Valentine's Day. And at Immediate, we have a financial wellness newsletter that goes out to all of our users each month. And the topic for February is couples and budgeting. And so our marketing team asked if we could do this so they can extract a couple of clips or quotes. I, of course, said yes. And then I came home and talked to Kaitlin, and she said, "What are you thinking?"
Yeah. Rule for Valentine's Day, you don't talk about the budget.
So I made a mistake, and now financially I'm paying for it. I'm going to have to get her a nicer Valentine's gift to make up for it. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, but also one of the things that we had talked about doing at some point, and it just made sense to do it now, would be to talk a little bit about for our listeners to hear kind of an inside story on what it's like to be married to an entrepreneur. We have, I feel like, gotten a lot better in the past couple of years in a variety of ways as it pertains to creating a good work-life balance, as it pertains to knowing how to communicate better on some of these things that we tackle on a daily basis. But also it's interesting for us because of where we started and where we are today. So depending on, why you're listening to this podcast. Some of you may be already entrepreneurs, or you may be thinking about it, or others may say, I have no interest in being an entrepreneur. And this may be a slam dunk for you to make you realize that you're right, or you're glad that your spouse is not an entrepreneur. But really what we want to do is just kind of talk a little bit about some things that's a peek behind the scenes. I think with a lot of things in life, there are perceptions versus reality, right? And I think that when people see they're a founder, they're a CEO, they're all these things, in a lot of cases, one, they think they may have it all figured out, whether it's professionally or personally. And two, I think there's also a little bit of a misconception around just because you have a C in your title doesn't mean that things at home are necessarily okay. And it also means that there's a lot of different things that you're balancing. And quite frankly, a lot of emotional pressure and weight that you carry. And I've been fortunate to have such an incredible woman by my side as we go through this journey that is now approaching 6.5 years, maybe more if we include like what I initially set out to do and then pivoted into this. So publicly, thank you. I really appreciate your support. A good place to start would be, if you're good with it, if you just want to talk a little bit about when we first started dating.
I think, focused on entrepreneurship, you were always like, you had a job or a steady income working for a bigger company. But you were always really honest about like what you wanted to do and your dream and your ambition. And then it was pretty shortly after that, I think, that you decided to be your own boss but didn't really know what that was going to look like. And I remember we were engaged. And so at the time I was like, okay, just be positive. This is a phase. This will eventually fizzle out. And then I realized that it wasn't. Uncertainty isn't really your favorite thing, which I think you do a good job of navigating, by the way. But I thought you would be like, do it for a couple months and then you would go back and get a normal job. And that obviously did not turn out to be the case. But yeah, I think it was just a lot of conversation and learning, and I had a good job. So fortunately, we didn't really have a lot of money stress, which was good. And I was able to cover all of the bills, all the things that we needed. But I think when we had another child and then I started to kind of question if I wanted to continue at my job, that was where I think the conflict and the challenges really started to come in, because we weren't doing a good job budgeting. We weren't doing a good job of having the hard conversations about our finances. And I was just kind of absorbing a lot of that stress so that you didn't have it with everything else you were dealing with. And if I could go back, that's probably something that I would have changed earlier on, like talking about money and being on the same page and not trying to kind of carry all of that myself.
I do think that's something that a lot of people are concerned or scared or just apprehensive to talk about
Yeah.
money, even though it is obviously a very important piece of the puzzle. We hear it a lot where people just say, I'm either a little embarrassed to ask questions,
Mm.
or I know that it's something that's going to create additional tension in a relationship, and so I just want to avoid it as opposed to talking about it. And I do feel like that's something that we've done better. I think for context for the listeners, when I decided to kind of go all in on being an entrepreneur, I had some consulting stuff. At first, I had a little bit of consulting
Hmm.
gigs on the side, but there's the old saying about like burning the ships, right? And if you're going to do something, you need to burn the ships and go all in. And so after about 6 months, probably about the time that we were launching our first clients at Immediate, which was late 2019,
Yeah.
stopped all other consulting and went to a point where I didn't have a salary for a good year and a half, maybe two
Maybe.
years.
Yeah. I think it's, yeah.
And that was a obviously a really difficult time. That in itself is a great misconception, and I think there's a lot of people who think like, "Oh, people start companies and then you just get to keep paying yourself a salary,"
Yeah.
and that just wasn't the case. The first year or so, we bootstrapped the business, meaning we just paid for it with our own funds between me and co-founders. And so when you're doing that, you're trying to stretch the business as far as it will go without having to go raise money, because once you start raising money, you start diluting your ownership, and also you start inviting more cooks into the kitchen. And so a big part of this for me at least was I feel like I've learned a lot from really good, successful leaders in my career experience for the first, call it 15 years of my career. And I was ready to go do something on my own and surround myself with smart people from in an advisory capacity. But I knew that once you start asking investors to come in, they're going to have strong opinions, and it's just another layer of complexity. And so all that to say is, that decision was, let's not take a salary for the first couple of years. Let's try to stretch the capital that we have in the business as far as we can before we start to open that door. And while I think for the business it was good, the home life was hard.
Yeah.
It was really stressful. It was kind of like it was at least for me, and I'd like to hear kind of your thoughts on it. But at least for me, it was a little bit like going back to like my first job out of college was a 100% commission sales rep job where I only got paid if I sold something. And so it was very much feast or famine. And I'm grateful for that time because it helped me understand and kind of planted the seed of what eventually became Immediate, 12, 14, 15 years later, to go in and offer a benefit to people who are living paycheck to paycheck or who are just simply looking for a responsible way to access their own earned pay. But all that to say is it was a big step back in time for me. And mentally, it was also a challenge. It was challenging because I went from being a breadwinner, being the one who was making more money out of the two of us, to literally making no money, and it taking a while before we got back to a place where I was making more money than you, which incidentally coincided with you deciding that I'm going to pull back and spend some time just being a mom. And
Yeah.
so, can
Yeah.
you talk about kind of those early days of Immediate and for our marriage and like kind of the toll that that took on you?
That period of time specifically when you decided to not take a salary, again, I understand why you did it for the business and it was a good thing. But honestly, it caused a lot of resentment because I was working full time for a company based in the Netherlands and Boston and was wanting to continue to get promotions and rise at work. And that meant a lot more travel and a lot more responsibility. And I got those things, but then and got the bigger paycheck. But while that was happening, it was more like, the kids get sick and you can't miss work. So I have to miss work, but I still have the financial pressure too. And so I felt like, honestly, the only thing that you were responsible for was the business and I had everything else. Yeah, I think that caused a lot of probably bitterness, resentment that I didn't want to share with you to add on. And eventually, it did come to a head and kind of a blow up and we have a good balance now. But in the early days, I felt like everything was kind of on me and Immediate was on you.
In hindsight, and I guess for people that are listening, especially people that are earlier on in this journey or thinking about taking a step into entrepreneurship, what would you coach them in in such a scenario?
I would probably make sure they have like a rainy day fund type thing where there's still some kind of an income that's not on one person, and they have those conversations earlier. Having help around you for kids really is a big deal. And we didn't have family here. And I think that was super, super hard. I mean, we have babysitters, but you have to pay them. So having family, having a support system when a sick day happens or things come up, if both parents are working, that's definitely a big one.
Let's fast forward a little bit to if we think about the past year or two, I would say, think one, we've done a better job of communicating on a lot of these things.
Mm.
Two, those roles flipped a little bit, right?
Mhm.
Immediate got to a place where we were able to raise a substantial amount of capital that allowed us to pay better salaries for the organization, which included me. You were able to take a step back from a big corporate
Mhm.
career where you were having to travel a ton, so we could try to be more of a core family, be here together, try to sleep in our own bed a little bit more than we had the past few years. I think
Mhm.
at some points as my travel is kind of picking up, we were kind of like ships in the night
Yeah.
for a little while there. Can you talk about some of the things that have been better the past couple of years, whether it's between us with the kids, things like that, and then after that, I'd like for us to kind of switch gears into talking a little bit about just finances in general. And when we think about like when you go back to how it started to kind of where we are, so focus on this part just around like the family side of it, and then
Mhm.
we'll go and talk more about like the finances and how that's changed. And
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think we stopped kind of thinking, "Okay, one day, one day, one day," in all areas, and really got to a better balance of like, "Okay, we can build this business and continue on this track, but we're still going to have a work-life balance. We're still going to take vacations or spend money on the things that we need to do." And that I think really helped just the whole family feel like this is okay. It's not like we're just waiting on something that may or may not happen in the future. I think that really was the biggest difference.
Mm, makes sense. So as it pertains to, and you said it earlier, like I don't necessarily know that we've ever been great about budgeting. Like I would say budgeting down to like a line item
Yeah,
kind of thing.
like a limit.
Right. I mean, I think I told you this at one point and you were like, you do? I mean, I do keep a spreadsheet every year of like inflows and outflows from our bank account and kind of know.
Yeah, but I think that's different than budgeting. That's like visibility, which is
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. I mean, it's like just, I want to obviously make sure like there are some months, especially like around the holidays, where we may go, okay, we spent more than we made this
Yeah.
month. And fortunately, kind of to your point, over the years, and we knew that you were working towards being able to leave a
Mhm.
big, well paid corporate job. So we started setting money
Yeah.
aside, right? It
Yeah.
wasn't just like you woke up on a Wednesday and said, I'm going to quit this Friday and I'm out for
Right.
2 weeks, right?
Yeah,
It
and
was
there's
like,
like a 8-month kind of ramp down.
and
Yeah.
so we were able to kind of structure this in a way where we said, all right, like when she said, I would tell people to think about a rainy day fund, we were kind of planning ahead of like, okay, if we know this is what Matt's salary is and this is what Caitlin's is, and she's going to go to not working, and we're going to do that for X period of time
Mhm.
before she goes and finds something for whether it's part time or consulting or moving into potentially going back into a full time job. But let's figure out kind of what that timeline looks like, and then let's make sure that we're setting aside enough to
Mhm.
kind of fill in that gap. So to your point, that visibility helped. Where if I could look and go, all right, in these months we were ahead by $800,
Mhm.
$1,000. We were able to save a little bit of money. Then we can also look at like what those outflows were and say, okay, and perfectly for me, I can go back and say, all right, well, during the summer we spend a little bit more because the kids are home and we're
Yeah.
going to do stuff when they go to the beach or something. And so we could kind of plan it out, looking at historical data and then understanding kind of where we are and what we need to set aside. So I do feel like that was something good for
Mhm.
us. And that was just having some vision into what was to come.
Yeah.
But when we talk about like, are there some best practices, thoughts on a kind of like day to day, month to month, year to year spending? Like, how do we handle it? Like, what are things that you feel like? And I know at one point you were like, I'll never share a credit card. And now we're on the same credit card and for better or worse. And
Yeah.
so, like, what are some things that you've seen that have like really worked out?
I mean, I think just having that accountability, like now that we do share a card, I know that if I spend a ridiculous amount of money in anthropology, you're going to ask me about it. So I try to not do that. But I think some of the better things like Shipped, for example, or a delivery service like that, I use them. And while there is a fee, it keeps me from going to Target and walking around and finding a cute little candle or a pillow or something that I don't really need, but it looks cute on the shelf. So I throw it in my cart. Whereas online, you add what you need, you make your, or you have your list, you add what you need and you're done. There's none of that kind of browsing or impulse buying like you would do in a store. So those kinds of trade-offs I think work really well. And it's a good thing to do. There's also like we have calendars of kids eat free nights, or we used to when they were little. Now all of our girls are too old for the kids eat free nights, which is sad. But just some of those like making plans ahead of time. So having your list, knowing what you need, knowing what you're doing for a week, and then like working the plan and not really deviating is helpful.
One other thing that we've done that in the past year or so we didn't do a great job, but about 2 years ago we started supporting and does work with a nonprofit that supports and empowers leaders in local communities across the world. They work in
Eight,
eight
eight
different
countries.
countries,
Yeah.
and so we had gone on a few trips together to go kind of see the impact that happens in these areas, and really felt kind of a pulling on our heart, not only for us to support them, but also to help our kids like understand that a lot of the questions, fears, concerns, frustrations that they have are first world problems
Yeah, for sure.
for sure. And so we started supporting where you could feed a kid for a month. And so we started doing that. And one of the things that we did for what we were paying, or what we still pay and donate, is that we would actually say, all right, kids, one night a month, and it was usually a Friday or Saturday night, we would do a night where we just ate rice for dinner, or sometimes it was just like plain pasta noodles with
You know,
butter.
like rice and beans. Yeah.
Yeah. And we would do that to say, all right, we just fed our family of five for, less than $10 on some cases with
I think
just
it was
rice.
like
Like,
$2.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was like really inexpensive. And we would make the point of like last night, we celebrated with one of our kids, something to celebrate. And we told her she could pick dinner, and she said she wanted sushi. And so I went and picked it up. It was $72, and
Oh,
$72 to feed a family of five isn't awful. Obviously, could be a lot higher, but kind of our point to them was, hey, instead of going to do something like that on a Friday night, we're going to eat rice. And the conversation we had was like, I want them to wake up on Saturday morning with a little bit of a rumble in their
mhm.
stomach, right? Like I want them to have this. And I said, when you have that feeling tomorrow morning, I want you to think about this girl. We've got her picture. It's actually right in the hall. We've got her picture up, and so we talk about that. We haven't been doing a great job. Maybe we got plans tonight, but maybe we should do that soon to kind of get back in the mode of that. But I share that one. That was something for us where we were like, we want to give back, but it's also another thing that I think you can do with your families of really just understanding that like it doesn't have to be just rice and beans night, right? It
Yeah.
could be like, hey, we're gonna pick one night where we saw that pork loins are on sale at
Yeah.
the grocery store and it's buy one, get one. And so we're gonna do that and it costs us $6. And then we're gonna do some sides, and we're gonna have nights where we have like low cost dinners.
Hmm.
And I think like it's something that I think we've done a good job of talking to our kids
Yeah.
about it, of
Yeah.
like, hey, we're not always just going to go out to a restaurant and let you get an appetizer and dessert, or like go get ice cream after every dinner. Like those are just things those should be rewards. Those should be things that we expect day in and day
Hmm.
out. And so I do feel like those are things that we've done a better job of, especially, and in my opinion, you tell me if you think I'm wrong. I think some of the reason we've done a better job of that is because we did kind of go back to that phase. I mean, when we were first dating, we both had good jobs. We didn't really have a whole lot of concerns about
Yeah.
money. We didn't have as much expenses. And so then to get married, start a business, all the things, it kind of reset and made us reprioritize where we're spending our money. Anything you'd add to
I
that?
mean, I think just emphasizing like food costs for a family right now is it's a major expense. And when you couple in like sports and all the activities in the evenings, it's really easy to just be like, okay, well, I'll swing through the drive through with this kid and then go back again to with this one. And that's, $20 each time. You're talking about $50 for takeout every single night. And that's just it adds up so quickly. So the more that you can plan out and make your meal plan, look at the deals and coupons or BOGOs, and then make that plan for the week and not deviate, not make a last minute change because one of your kids is freaking out because they don't want beans and rice for dinner. And
That
not
would be our
yeah, yeah,
youngest.
yeah. And Matt's the worst about being like, okay, fine, I'll just make you a sandwich. But don't do that. Stick with your meal. Like it's not a restaurant. That's my saying. This is not a restaurant. This is what we're having for dinner. Eat it or don't. and I know that that's what my food cost for the week is going to be. So I think that that makes a big difference.
I do think the other thing that you talked about, we use Shipt. There's also Instacart and some of the others. I think like Uber Eats. I think will do grocery delivery now. We've been with Shipt ever since we.
Well, and Ship doesn't have a markup on a lot of the stores. So Target, there's zero markup on items. That's why I use it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that I do think, in my mind, there's a lot of times where I'd see a Shipt. We're on the same credit card. My phone would light up, and I'd be like, "Why did we just spend $88 on Shipt?" But I think it's a great point. And again, like had we not had conversations like this, and we've obviously had this discussion in the past, but to talk about like, hey, if I do Shipt and they go to Target, I'm getting just the
Hmm.
16 things I need for dinner for the next couple of nights and for lunches for the kids at school. Whereas if I go there, and I'm probably going to have at least one of the three kids tag along with me who are going to keep asking for something until I get it for them.
Hmm.
Right. In a lot of cases, you see something that looks good or something that's new or whatever. And so her point has always been like, we actually save money to not have those impulse buys. So I do think there's areas and probably just in life in general, but as it pertains to like spending, there's certain things where like if you feel like you don't necessarily have the self-control
Yeah.
in the place, and so Shift I think has been a
Yeah.
good one for us.
Yeah.
I will say that like there are usually on the weekends I'm up before everybody else and I run out to like pick up breakfast usually on Saturdays. Like I'll go pick breakfast up and I like to go to the grocery store on a Saturday morning when they open at like 7 and I'll get there at like 7:15 and there's nobody there. And I can kind of go through and what I do is I'll look for things that are things we regularly use.
Hmm.
And if they're buy one, get one, then I'll go try to load up on some of those. Or if I see a lightning deal on Amazon, we're always going to be using toothpaste. So I'll buy some of those things. So I do think
Hmm.
those are probably some best practices and just always looking for deals and trying to protect yourself against getting into a situation where I'm at the grocery store. It looks good. I want
Hmm.
it. I'm going to buy it,
Yeah.
even though I didn't plan to get it when I came
Right.
here.
Yeah. And another thing online shopping that I've tried to start doing is if I see something cute, like on an Instagram ad, I'm the worst for that. Let it sit in your cart for like 2 days. And then if you still want it, then you go back to it. But I've found that a lot of the times after the moment has passed, I don't want it anymore.
Yeah.
So I don't, all that impulse kind of click to buy, it has gone away.
I will say, husbands and wives, one or the other may not like this, but I do feel like when we got onto the same credit card, I mean, we
For
merged bank
sure.
accounts
Yeah.
like as soon as we got married. I'm just a big believer in that.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I don't think we need to have separate bank accounts, and so that was a good one. But two, I do feel like having our own or having a credit card that we
Yeah.
share. Now it's an American Express; they don't take that everywhere, so she does have a separate card that she uses every now and again. Like if you go somewhere and they won't take Amex, I don't. I just don't buy it if they don't take Amex because I like the points. But
Mhm.
but it creates more transparency, which is obviously a good thing. Some people don't like transparency. I do think that in a good relationship where you're open about
For sure.
everything, like
For
you
sure.
need to
Yeah.
have that.
For
And so
sure.
one of the things that we did was we put in place a limit of here's our fixed expenses. We know these are the things we got to pay every month, right? Mortgage, utilities, blah 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 blah. Our spending, like our things that we want for ourselves, we kind of have like I don't want to call it a budget, but it's just kind of like a loose number, right? It's like, hey, here's kind of what we can because we know the delta and we know that we want to have savings. Based on that, earlier on the number was lower. The number's grown over time, but now it's like up to $200. We don't have to ask for permission. Like
No, I wouldn't
permission's
say
not the right
ask.
word.
Yeah. Discuss.
Yeah, discuss.
Discuss.
That's a better way
Mhm.
of saying it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's definitely not asking for permission. It's like, hey, this is something I want to buy. Here's what I want to do now. There's not a whole lot of stuff I buy. You know what I mean? But like, there's not as much of that for me coming to you going, hey, I want to discuss this before I go spend
Mhm.
$300 on something. But that does happen with you, and
Yeah.
I feel like it's good because um, one, you're like, do I really want it? If I've got
Mhm.
to go have this
Mhm. Yeah.
conversation,
100%.
we first started doing this, it was earlier on in our marriage. I think the limit was like 75 or $100 or something. It was like, it
Mhm.
was lower. And so
Mhm.
that happened more frequently and it grew a little bit. We're like, all right, up to $200, like we don't have to talk about this now.
Mm.
Anything else that you want to cover just around, like, I do feel like kind of circling back to the beginning, and knowing that this is coming out Valentine's week, there are
Mhm.
probably a lot of people out there who, whether they're considering entrepreneurship or their spouse, maybe any kind of words of wisdom that you may want to share with people just about this process, about the things that you've learned, anything you would say like maybe we should have done it a different way and in hindsight?
I actually got this advice early on from an entrepreneur's wife, and I didn't take it as well as I should have, but she was right. Learning when to listen and when to give advice is a huge one. Like a lot of the times you will be just sharing what's happening and I start trying to jump in and tell you my opinion or what you should do. And it kind of goes south sometimes if it's not exactly what you had in mind, or you just don't want, like you're just trying to offload it. Knowing when to just nod or give you a hug is the biggest thing. I think I feel like I've done better, but that's the biggest thing. Like every time that you're talking about something is not the time for me to give you advice. That's the biggest one.
Ditto. I agree with that. I certainly agree with that. I do think there's like a lot of as an entrepreneur, and I'm sure most people have heard this. It can be very lonely, right?
Mhm.
And you carry a lot of weight. And there's not a whole lot of people you can talk to about with things, right? If
Yeah.
there's something that I'm really struggling with, I have mentors, I have friends, I have advisors, but you've got to be careful about certain things
Yeah.
that you share with all of them. And so there's times where I don't feel comfortable sharing this with anyone else besides you.
Mhm.
And I don't do a great job of this. I've tried. I'm not good at it. But, like, I do feel like there's, like, kind of starting a conversation with, like, I just need to get some things off my chest versus, like, help me solve this problem.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, and I've
Because
started asking you too, like, do you want me to respond or are you just trying to share and be intentional about asking that?
I do think that that's a good probably for both sides to
Mhm.
like, so I
Mhm.
appreciate you asking those questions, because there are some times where I'm like, I'm just like, I need to get this off my chest because I'm frustrated. I can't bottle it in and I can't talk to anybody else about it. And then when you start going in a problem solving mode or trying to like, well, what about this? Have you thought about this? And I was like, no, 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 no. I just need to get all this stuff out. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And
Yeah.
so, so I do feel like it's, it's been a lot better in the past year, year and a half. I do think in most cases, because you like recognize it, there's sometimes where he just is just like going, and I just need to let him go and get things off his chest,
Mhm.
and then in some cases I may say, but I don't know what to do, and I'd love help, or I'd like your thoughts.
Mhm. Thoughts, yeah. You
Yeah,
do ask sometimes for that, yeah.
I do think that's really, really
Mhm.
good advice
Yeah.
for if you're an entrepreneur listening to this, or if you need to forward this to your spouse. That's something I think is a really good lesson learned.
Yeah, but then to the entrepreneurs, know that your wife, it's also pretty lonely to be the wife because she feels like she can't come to you with her stress or it's hard to see you and, having a rough day. It's just hard. And
Yeah.
there's nobody for us to talk to either.
Yeah.
So just know that too.
Yeah, there's I remember I was at an event and somebody asked me this is like a year or so ago, and they were like, "Hey, I'm thinking about becoming an entrepreneur. What advice would you give me?" And I said, "Don't do it."
Really?
Oh, yeah. And they were like, "What?" And I said, and then I said, "There's a second part to the answer, right?" My response is, "Don't do it." The second part of the answer is, unless you really believe in it and believe enough that you can go spend the next decade of your life working on this. And I would probably add, if I could do that over again, say, add that you've got someone in your corner, like a spouse, that's going to be there for you and supportive. They're supportive of the decision, but they know that they're getting into this too. Because
Mhm.
my point is, it's really hard. It's like really hard. And so if you are going to just come up to somebody and go, I think I'm going to start a business. What do you think I should do? I'm going to go, don't do it. I don't know anything about your business. I don't know what
Right.
kind of business you're trying to build. Happy to have a conversation with you and give you my insights if I think that it's a viable idea or something that you could actually go out and do. But in kind of a knee jerk, it's like, don't do it. I don't feel like the entrepreneurial journey is for everybody.
Right. Yeah.
It's definitely not.
Agree. Yeah.
And super high highs and really low lows
And every day is different.
every day.
You can have your highest high in the morning and then by night it's really low all of
Yeah,
a sudden and I don't even know what happened.
yeah. A
Yeah.
lot of times on the same day, yeah,
Mhm.
or in the same hour. We
Yep.
we had one back in the summer where we lost a huge deal in the morning, and I was just gut punched, and I was like to a point where I was like, I need to go for like an hour walk and just clear my head and like, listen
Mm.
to a podcast or something. And I got back and I checked my email and we won a huge deal. Like the contract had come in an hour, it was up and down. And so be prepared. There are a lot of ups and downs.
Mhm.
And we didn't do Brews. I did just say what mine was. Do you want to tell them what yours is, Caitlin?
It's the brew that comes from grapes, Matt. It's a weekend, and I don't do this every day.
Until next time, thanks for joining us on Business and Brews.
Bye.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Thanks.
All right. See you, everybody.